This episode of the podcast is a little different than our usual sit downs because this time it's just me freeballing and giving you mostly information about and a little bit of my opinion about anti-natalism, I'm sorry, because it just made national news. I don't know if you've been living under a rock or not, but Raphael Samuel, this guy from Mumbai, goes by the name Nihil Anand on YouTube, is trying to sue his parents for giving birth to him without his consent. And I thought I'd share my 2 rupees on the topic. Having that said, I understand that a lot of people have very emotional and very passionate opinions about children and whether to have them and whether to procreate or not to procreate and why. So, I recommend that you listen to the entire thing and you think about it. We all leave with our opinions intact and we don't have to we can disagree because after all we live in a free society. You're free to have children if you want to. If you don't want to have children, don't have children. That's completely fine as well for whatever reasons you have. Now, anti-natalists are definitely ones who don't like children, and their biggest hero is this guy named Peter Wessel Zeff. He's a Norwegian metaphysician who viewed humans as a biological paradox. Basically, he believed that the fact that we're aware of our existence and the purposelessness and pain in it, along with the fact that we're parasitic to Earth in relation, should be enough reason for us to stop procreating. The more humans we create, the more pain we create for everybody and the human themselves. It is a lose-lose situation for everybody. There is no reason why somebody should have a child. There's also a Kantian way to look at it. Immanuel Kant, when he talks about morality, one of the imperatives he presses on is that a man should never be used as a means to an end, but always as an end himself. So basically, he thinks it's immoral to use people to get to something. But at the same time, it is okay for you if the person himself is an end. So I'm interpreting it as Kant is saying that having a child for having a child is fine, but having a child because a child makes you happy is immoral. Sounds cuckoo, but it's technically true. I mean, in the aspect of the statement. Of course, most of us listen to this statement and we think about manipulation, romantic relationships, legal relationships, office relationships, people being vultures to each other, how that's bad. But the same applied to birth, it sounds really dicey. And unfortunately, it's not a concept that's only been in the West. Some of the interpretations of Buddha have suggested that he might be anti-natalistic at least. Because an interpretation of his words when he talks about life as suffering say that oblivious of the suffering to which the life is subject, man begets children and is thus cause of old age and death. If he would only realize what suffering would add to by his act, he would desist from procreation of children and so stop the operation of old age and death. And if life is suffering and you want to reduce pain for everybody, why wouldn't you stop having children? Buddha's completely clear about that. But again, Buddha's also away from all temptations and expectations in life, which are the root cause of suffering to him. And that's my next point, expectation. I'm not sure if you guys have come across the suicide statistics in this country, but these kids really don't like living. That's a conclusion I could make looking at how many of them have attempted or successfully, killed themselves. And a lot of this is about this conversation about parents putting pressure on their children for them to be what they want them to be. Like vicariously living your life through your children is a big part of what has created such a toxic environment for children in our country. The movie 3 Idiots, as cringy as it sounds to bring it up, was released 10 years earlier and things haven't gotten better since. They've gotten better, but not marginally, not spectacularly, just marginally. And that bothers me. Like, if these kids are born and told to be somebody else who they don't want to be, is there really a point for them to exist the way they do? because all it's going to lead to is more kids who don't know what to do with themselves, who will give birth to more kids who have no idea what to do to themselves. And the cycle just continues. So, is it immoral to give birth to children? I don't know. I'm not a morality expert. And plus, morality itself is such an abstractly defined concept. There is such less objectivity to it that I'd rather not comment on it. And antinatalism, of course, is a very moral stand. It says it is immoral to have children. And it kind of makes sense. But at the same time, it crosses over the individual's right to free will. Even for selfish needs, you're allowed to have children. So, while I won't pretend that you having a child wouldn't affect me, I would also not say that I would have a problem with you having a child, because, well, you're allowed to do that. You should be allowed to do that. It's your body, and if you want to be impregnated and then raise a child with the rest of your life, that's completely fine by me. But are the reasons okay? I can at least discuss that. Seems to me that most of them are not. Logically, if you want to protect the individuality of a child, how are you going to do that without imposing... how are you going to do that if you mold him to be what you want him to be? And these children will be shaped by you, don't get me wrong. They just won't want to be what you want them to become after they've grown up. Till then, they'll obviously listen to you and they'll think you're the shit and things like that. And that's where antinatalism makes sense. There's 8 point something billion of us. There's so many of us that having more and more children is not logical anymore. It's not pragmatic. We know the moral duty of having children went away a long time ago. And having children for political gain is a problem in itself. You have seen Stalin and Hitler, left and the right, what kind of men would, or women, would affirm that. It's the authoritative type, which I'm not very fond of. But at the same time, I strongly disagree with Nihil Anand or Raphael Samuel about being paid to exist or maintain their existence. I can't punish people who've already given birth for whatever reason they have with zero knowledge of what has happened. You were not asked consent for being born. Well, some people were not given the information to ask you for consent before you were born. Antinatalism is a niche amount of knowledge. And while your publicity stunt is getting it out there, I don't think giving you money to exist is a good idea at all. It's just going to create more and more leeches everywhere. And I don't want that. If your case against your parents is a publicity stunt in the court, I'm cool with that. I think this was a great idea to get attention to this thing, but at the same time, if you're genuinely looking for money to be taken from your parents for the rest of your life because they gave birth to you, I think that's morally wrong as well. You don't owe anything to your parents, and your parents don't owe anything to you. Nihil Anand, Raphael Samuel, said it himself in his video. And well, you contradicted yourself there, buddy. I'm sorry, but you can't be paid for it. While I encourage you to tell people to not have children because you think it's morally wrong, have a conversation with them, let them know that why you think it's not okay and why it doesn't make sense for us to have any more children or have less children in the future. That's great, but at the same time, don't ask for money because you're existing. That's just sad. In conclusion, all I want to say is having a child is logically not a very sensible move. If you've already decided in your brain that because of your emotionality you want to have a child, go right ahead. But at the same time, you must remember, if you've heard this podcast already, that this child will not be who you want him to be. He will be what he wants to be after he's grown up. Till then, it's your job to shape him to be as less botherable to society as possible. After that, if he decides that he is the polar opposite of you and not harmful to society, you gotta live with that. If he's a criminal, of course, I'm sorry for you and I don't know what you would do in that situation. And at the same time, stop blaming your parents for your existence. It is completely possible that they didn't know better to have children. all of us, especially the more privileged ones who have access to education and literature, know that a lot of people in the past have just looked up to their parents and done what their parents told them, or done what their parents structured for them ahead in their future, and it worked out for them because that made them happy. Now, unfortunately, societal behavior also rewards your evolutionary instinct. So it makes sense why it would work for most people, if not everybody. But I see the problem on the grander scale, and as somebody who really cares about the concept of individuality and identity of you as an individual, consider not having a child and be nice to your parents if you can be. At the same time, know that you don't owe anything to them and they don't owe anything to you. You are friends with each other and treat each other like friends. That's how an ideal parental relationship should be. Well, that was convoluted, wasn't it?
It was, people will get confused listening to that.
But it's the best I got. I think I'm gonna put out this take and not edit this part at all. So, well, I hope to see you next week, where we'll probably discuss something less controversial. Goodbye.